Hi, everyone. Welcome to my session. My name is Andrei Cimpian. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychology at NYU, and I'll be talking to you today about beliefs that act as obstacles to math learning and what we can do about them. Please remember to download my handouts from the resource page on this website. And if you're interested in finding out more about the work that we do in my lab, scanning this QR code with a camera on your phone will take you right to our website. I'll be placing similar QR codes throughout the presentation to give you access to papers to describe in more detail the arguments and the data that I'll be presenting. And following my presentation, I'll be responding to your questions in the chat space for the live Q&A. Now let's get started. We're all gathered here at the summit to talk about how best to support students' learning and achievement in mathematics, especially given the unique and severe difficulties that have emerged in our education system in light of the COVID pandemic. I'll keep things simple in my presentation today and make a single, but I think important point. In our culture and in many others, success in math is equated with being smart. We tend to think that only those who are super smart can be good at math. If we see someone who excels in math, we automatically think, wow, that person is really intelligent. And we're more likely to think this with respect to math than with respect to other domains. Well, my main and only point for today is that this is a really counterproductive belief, a belief that stifles children's learning in math and prevents them from doing their best. When a child equates doing well in math with being smart, certain questions are likely to arise for them that just wouldn't have come up otherwise. Am I smart enough to do well in math? What does it mean that I didn't do well on my homework or on this test? Does it mean that I'm not smart? What will my friends think of me if I don't get the answer right? Will they think I'm not smart? What will my teacher think of me if I don't know how to solve this problem? Will they think I'm not smart? Is this even for me? Am I cut out for this? Do I have what it takes? Questions such as these are much more likely to come up for students to the extent that success in math is tied to intellectual ability, which of course is extremely counterproductive for these questions to come up. Math is hard enough as is for students, right? We shouldn't be making it harder for them by filling their heads with ideas that are going to make them second guess their every move and add the cognitive load of wondering what everything in math class means about their intelligence. Importantly, while these thoughts will be counterproductive for all students, regardless of their gender and their race and ethnicity, they may have particular force for students from groups that our society is less likely to see as intellectually talented. So because cultural stereotypes still to this day associate boys and men with intellectual ability, brilliance, genius more than girls and women, because cultural stereotypes still to this day associate white people with intellectual ability, brilliance, genius more than Black and brown people, the belief that doing well in math is reserved for the super smart has implications for equity in math in the math classes. This belief will impose a heavier burden on students from groups whose intelligence our culture has doubts about. It is these students who are more likely to wonder all these things and suffer the consequences of the distraction and concerns brought about by these questions. On this point, let me take a quick detour and tell you a little bit about the genesis of this work in my lab, about how we came to do this work in the first place, to give you a flavor for the broader background here. One of the things that we really want to understand is the reasons for the substantial and stubborn gender and racial ethnic gaps in science and engineering professions. What explains this problem and its stubborn nature? My colleagues and I have been developing a hypothesis for this pattern of underrepresentation that puts the gaps in STEM fields in the broader context of gender and racial ethnic segregation in academia and the industry more generally. Our account proposes that women and minorities are particularly likely to be underrepresented in fields that value and are perceived to value high levels of intellectual ability. In other words, things like brilliance, genius. This is so because women and racial ethnic minorities, like we were just discussing, are still subject to stereotypes about their intellectual abilities, which makes brilliance-oriented fields less welcoming to them, regardless of their actual competence and ability. We call this the field-specific ability beliefs hypothesis. Just to make this more concrete with the diagram, There's a broad stereotype we propose that associates brilliance with men, and maybe white men in particular. And that stereotype combines with differences among fields in the extent to which their members believe that high levels of intellectual ability, giftedness, brilliance, are required for success. And the combination of these two factors we propose explains at least a portion of the complex pattern of gender and racial ethnic gaps in academia and the industry. Over this last 7 or so years, there's been lots of evidence that my collaborators and I have accumulated for this particular account of gender and racial ethnic gaps in academia and the industry. Here's one of the first pieces of evidence that suggested that we were on the right track. This is evidence from a nationwide survey of academics across 30 different fields, in which we asked them, among other things, to what extent they believe that intellectual talent, brilliance is required for success in their field. And we aggregated the responses to the level of the field, and we used these field level responses to predict the magnitude of the gender gaps in their field. And what you see here is that the more a field emphasizes brilliance, this is the emphasis on brilliance is depicted on the x-axis, with higher numbers indicated more of an emphasis on brilliance. The more a field emphasizes brilliance, the fewer women obtain PhDs in that field, the lower the percentage of PhDs in that field who are women. And we find similar patterns for African American PhDs, suggesting that it is many groups who are stigmatized with respect to their intellectual abilities that are underrepresented in fields that value brilliance. And since the topic of the summit is mathematics, let me also point out where mathematics is on this continuum. Very high up. It's one of the fields in which success is most strongly associated with intellectual ability, which is consistent with the point that we started with. And of course, it makes sense that these beliefs about the role of intellectual ability and success would take their heaviest toll on members of our society who are viewed as less than brilliant, less than gifted. This includes girls, this includes Black and brown children. So take this recent article from the New York Times, for example. The author had access to anonymous Google searches performed by parents in the privacy of their homes. And he was interested in how often parents search Google about the physical attributes of their sons and daughters and the intellectual attributes of their sons and daughters. And what he found was as following. For every 10 searches in Google about girls being gifted, there are about 2.5 times as many searches about boys being gifted. So this is essentially saying that parents are much more likely to expect boys to be gifted than girls, even though in reality, and the parenthetical there is very important, if you look at, for example, the composition of gifted and talented programs, which have strict IQ cutoff, you see that girls are actually in reality slightly overrepresented relative to boys in these programs. So parents aren't picking up on reality and therefore inferring that their sons are gifted. They're bringing to their expectations that are conditioned by cultural beliefs about who is likely to be gifted and who is not. Sadly, but maybe not surprisingly, when the author examined searches about physical attributes, he found that those searches were much more common in searches about daughters relative to sons. A little closer to higher education, which I think many participants in the symposium are currently employed in, you can look also for evidence of this stereotype at how college students talk about their instructors on Rate My Professor. Probably many of you are familiar with Rate My Professor. Any college student can go on this website and anonymously rate their instructor, as well as provide open-ended comments about their instructor. These open-ended comments were scraped and made searchable such that anyone can go to this website that I listed down here and type in any words they want, and the website will give them a breakdown of how often those words appear in reviews of male instructors and female instructors across 25 or so fields. If you go to this website and search for the word genius, you see that, not surprisingly, given the evidence that we've been discussing, the word genius appears about 3 times as often in reviews of male instructors relative to female instructors. If you search for the word brilliant, you see that it's about twice as common in reviews of male instructors relative to female instructors. So, okay, at this point you might wonder, okay, so clearly adults have these beliefs, but do kids believe this? If you're worried about what happens, you might say, in the elementary school classroom, you have to show that kids are also familiar with or endorse these stereotypes. Well, sadly, we have evidence that they do. So I'm going to tell you about a couple of studies where we measured children's stereotypes about brilliance with respect to gender specifically. Measuring children's stereotypes is tricky work, as anyone who's worked with young kids, which is what the population we're interested in working with here. At these young ages, there's a lot of quote unquote in-group bias, but kind of technical term, which means that there's a lot of positivity towards members of one's own gender group. So you can't just ask kids, like, who do you think is smarter, girls or boys? You kind of have to be sneaky about it, because if they catch on that this is a girls versus boys situation, then they'll just give you the answer that makes their own group look good, regardless of what they really think. So here's how we did it. We talked to children one-on-one, and a trained researcher read little stories such as the following to them. There are lots of people at the place where I work, but there's this one person who is really, really special. This person is really, really smart. This person figures out how to do things quickly and comes up with answers much faster and better than anyone else. This person is really, really smart. Right? So a couple of important things about this: we're using really, really smart instead of brilliant or genius, as which are some of the words that we were looking at in adults, because brilliant and genius are not in your average, 5, 6-year-old vocabulary, which is some of the ages that we included here. And perhaps more importantly, we didn't mention at all any clues to this person's gender. We kept talking about this person this and this person that. The idea being to kind of like let kids imagine this person and then kind of catch them in the act of imagining a woman or a man. So what we did after we read these stories is show them pictures of unfamiliar women and men, and we just asked them to make a guess. If you had to make a guess, who do you think the person in the story is from among these individuals? Um, and here's what we found. So I'm going to show you on the y-axis here the proportion of trials on which children chose members of their own gender as being really, really smart. And the x-axis has the 3 age groups that we included in the study: 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and 7-year-olds. At the age of 5, the majority of children chose members of their own gender as being the really, really smart person in the story, consistent with the overwhelming in-group positivity that a lot of young children display toward their gender in-group. However, already at 6 and 7, you see a pretty substantial change happening, such that girls are much less likely to choose members of their own gender than boys are, and that pattern stays similar at the age of 7. And they're at 6 and 7 significantly less likely to choose members of their own gender as being really, really smart. So one way of interpreting this is that already at the age of this pattern of results is that already at the ages of 6 and 7, you see children endorsing this idea that it's men who are more likely to be really, really smart, to be brilliant than women. Okay, so essentially these questions and doubts that associating success in math with intellectual ability will give rise to may disproportionately affect girls and Black and brown children. Although, to be clear, we've been focusing on the effects on equity in the math classroom. They are likely to affect all children to some extent. It's just that their impact might fall disproportionately on children belonging to groups that are stigmatized with respect to their intellectual ability. Okay, the one question that we haven't talked so far is probably the most obvious one. Okay, so do kids in fact associate math more than other school subjects with intellectual ability? If so, when do they start doing this? And is there any evidence of the kinds of negative relationships between this belief and children's motivation and psychological well-being that I've been talking about and proposing? So I'll tell you about some evidence on this point. But first, very briefly, we measure children's math equals smart beliefs with very simple items, very child-friendly, simple scale items. So for example, one is kids must be really, really smart to do well in math, and kids are shown a scale that they're trained to use that goes from disagree a lot to agree a lot, with thumbs down to thumbs up and frowning face to smiling face. The evidence that I'll tell you about, let me just give you the punchline first, is that for children as young as 6, already math success in math is associated with being smart. Here's an article that just came out recently in Developmental Science, where we show this. We recruited a sample of about 174 kids from New York City and from Chicago, pretty diverse sample, only 52% of them were white. And we found that, as you might expect, given our society's beliefs about success in math, beliefs that associate success in math, more so than reading and writing, with brilliance, were already present in children in grades 1st through 4th. And these beliefs related negatively to children's self-efficacy, their confidence in their ability to do well in math, and their interest in math. And notably, speaking to the link to equity or inequity, as the case may be, the negative relationship between believing that math is for smart kids and self-efficacy, confidence, was particularly negative for girls in this study. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the study because, well, I put a QR code so you can read it yourself, but I also have a newer, larger study that's not yet published that expands the scope of this research to another cultural context that I want to tell you about in a tiny bit more detail. So specifically in this study, we collected a sample of about 4,000 children from Singapore, which provides an interesting comparison to the US because the Confucian emphasis on effort is very strong in Singapore. So you might think that that makes it less likely for children to associate math with smarts when culturally the emphasis on effort is so strong. So Singapore, we thought, allows for a fairly conservative test of the idea that even young children associate success in math with being super smart. We measured children's beliefs about math with the items similar to the ones I showed you about on the previous slides. We had children between the ages of 6 to 16, so pretty broad age range, about half girls, half boys. And the ethnic distribution of the children in the sample mirrored the ethnic distribution of children in Singapore more generally. In addition to the beliefs about success in math, we also administered a range of math outcomes, we call them. So essentially attitudes as well as achievement-related outcomes in math. So we administered a measure of math self-efficacy, measure of math interest, a measure of math career aspirations. So we asked children, when you grow up, how much do you want to do a math job on a scale from 1 to 4? 1, I really don't want to 4, I really want to. And we also asked children's parents to report their grades in math. And we brought grades because there's quite a bit of variability in Singapore in terms of how children are graded. We brought all grades on a 1 to 4 scale. Because the results are very similar across these different measures, and because I don't have time to go into the details of the different measures, what we did is essentially standardize and average these together into a single math outcomes composite measure. So I'll show you the results for that composite measure, but I'll also give you a hint of what the results were separately for the different outcomes. They weren't really that different. Okay, so what did we see in this large study on children's beliefs about success in math in Singapore? Well, consistent with a study from the US that I mentioned briefly before, we saw pretty early emergence of the idea that success in math requires a lot of intellectual ability. This is collapsed across the entire sample. I'll break it down by age in the next slide, but across the entire sample, we see that children are significantly more likely to think that you have to be really, really smart to be good at math than that you have to be really, really smart to be good at reading. And the effect size here was about a third of a standard deviation. So not huge, but also not tiny. In terms of age, so remember we had a pretty broad age range from 6 to 16, so we split it up into the younger children and the older children, and we saw something quite interesting here. So this is the left-hand bars are the younger children, the right-hand bars are the older children, and again on the y-axis you have endorsement of this idea that you need to be super smart to succeed in math. Probably the most noticeable effect here is the fact that older children overall were less likely to buy into the idea that you have to be super smart to be good at math. which from our perspective is, like a positive development. Um, the difference between math and reading was present at both ages. However, there was also a domain by age interaction, meaning that the difference between math and reading got bigger with age. So even though older children overall were less likely to think that math and reading require lots and lots of smarts for success, the difference between their beliefs about math and reading actually became bigger, right? So relative to reading, math was seen as more likely to, increasingly more likely to require uh, super levels of intelligence. We also looked at whether there are gender differences in terms of endorsement of the idea that math requires loads of smarts for success. And we didn't find gender differences. So both girls and boys were more likely to believe that math requires high levels of intelligence relative to reading, and the magnitude of the difference between math and reading was not different between girls and boys, as indicated by the fact that the domain by gender interaction here was not significant. Importantly, we also looked at the relationship between these math equals smart beliefs and children's math outcomes. So remember, we measure children's interest in math, their self-efficacy in math, their aspirations for math careers, as well as their math grades, and we aggregated them into a math outcomes composite. So what did we find in terms of the relationship between believing that you need to be super smart to be good at math and math outcomes? So on the x-axis here, you see these are the children who were most likely to disagree with the belief that math is for super smart kids, or they were least likely to agree with it. And this is kids who are more likely to agree. They're at one standard deviation above the average endorsement of the belief that math is for smart kids. And on the y-axis is this composite of math outcomes that I've described before. Importantly, for purposes of this talk, we found a significant relationship between believing that math is for super smart kids and outcomes, such that the more children endorsed that math is for smart kids, the lower their math outcomes were. And you can see this from the fact that the bar for girls among girls who endorse the belief is lower than the bar for girls who don't endorse, who are less likely to endorse this belief. And same for boys. Their outcomes are lower when they endorse this belief than when they don't endorse this belief. We also found, perhaps not surprisingly, a gender main effect here, such that outcomes were higher for boys than they were for girls. Both of the blue bars are higher than the red bars. And there was no, interestingly, given our argument, there was no interaction between gender and endorsement of the math equals smart belief. So in this sample, it's not the case that endorsement of this belief is disproportionately harmful or correlates with disproportionately negative outcomes for girls relative to boys. The last bit of data I want to show you pertains to how these beliefs might have their effects. Some of the questions that we started with that might be triggered in children's minds when they think that math is for smart kids concern how they will be judged by others. Would my friends think I'm not smart? Would my teachers think I'm not smart? That might actually stifle their ability to express their confusion, share with others that they made a mistake, and ask for advice, and so on and so forth, which are important elements of learning. If you feel like you can't tell anyone that you don't understand, that you're not going to be able to have others explain whatever the relevant concept is to you, and therefore you're not going to learn. So if we find that kids in math in particular feel like they can't admit when they're confused and when they don't understand something, and that's tied to their perception that you need to be smart to be good at math, and therefore they don't want to say anything when they don't understand, then that would be a real problem that would interfere with their learning. So in this study, my colleague Tennille Porter and I, we recruited about 1,400 adolescents. So these are slightly older kids in grades 9 to 12. And we asked them a version of this question. This is a simplified version of the question they were asked. Is there a class subject where you regularly have difficulty admitting that you're confused and you don't understand something? About 40% of them said that they had a class where they regularly struggled to express ignorance and confusion. Now, let me show you which classes they mentioned. Among this group that they said that, yes, there was at least one class where they regularly struggled. As you can see here, is that about 63% of them said that the class that they regularly struggle in is math. Math was by far the class that was mentioned most often relative to the other ones. The second most common category was students who mentioned a bunch of classes, and then science was in third position. So this is consistent with the idea that thinking that you have to be super smart to be good at math, a belief that we document in the previous study, really interferes with your ability to learn in this class, because you're not going to feel comfortable admitting when you're confused or when you don't understand something. Importantly, in the studies that I'm telling you about here, we also found that the students' discomfort with expressing their ignorance and confusion was uniquely predicted by their belief that that the math is for super smart kids, that you need to be super smart to be good at math. Above and beyond, importantly, their growth mindsets about math. So above and beyond their beliefs about whether you can improve your math ability or your math ability is fixed, and above and beyond their own grades and math, we found that thinking that math is for super smart kids predicted lower levels of comfort expressing confusion and disclosing mistakes, which is likely to be an obstacle to learning. So in light of all this evidence, I'm wrapping up here. I think it's pretty clear that this idea that to succeed in math, one has to be super smart is pretty damaging. So what do we do about it? My talk today was, to be honest, more of a kind of like raising awareness of an issue talk than a here's what to do talk. I look forward to doing the work of figuring out exactly what works and what doesn't. But even before that, I think there are a couple of concrete suggestions that follow from this work. I think it's important for teachers to avoid linking outcomes in math with intellectual ability. And it may already feel natural to not do that for negative outcomes, so you don't impugn a child's intellectual ability when they don't do well. But there may be an incentive, teachers might be motivated to praise for intelligence, children who do well, who get good grades in math. So that it's harder to abstain from doing that, but I think it's going to be important, because doing that essentially conveys to children, not just the one that's being praised for their intelligence when they get a good grade in math, but to everyone else in the class, that essentially succeeding or not succeeding in math is a function of how smart you are. So it's important to keep this idea in mind, that any conversation, any kind of language that ties success in math to intellectual ability is likely to have detrimental outcomes. I think it's also important for teachers to beware of labeling intellectual ability to combat stereotypes. A lot of teachers naturally want to make the world a better place, want to combat stereotypes, want to ensure that children grow up not thinking that some groups are better than others, are smarter than others, or better at science than others, which can lead to a tendency to label prominent members of minority groups, women, with superlatives with respect to their intellectual ability. This comes up a lot in the context of role models. It's very intuitive to hold up Marie Curie and talk about how brilliant she was in an attempt to motivate, for example, girls to pursue a scientific career, to reassure them that they have the intellectual ability to succeed no matter what they put their mind to. However, labeling these legendary figures with their intellectual ability is likely to also send the message to children that essentially you need to have a lot of intellectual ability, just like this person did, in order to succeed. And to the extent that the children in your class might doubt that they have that, this honest attempt to make a difference for the better, can actually end up backfiring. So I think it's important to be sort of be careful to try to fight stereotypes by labeling members of negatively stereotyped groups with, in the context of math at least, with uh, positive labels with respect to their intellectual ability, because that might send additional messages that could end up harming as well as helping. I think what teachers can do, that's probably the safest, most effective thing to do, is to, instead of trying to change stereotypes that children have, which is sort of an uphill battle, because when they leave your classroom, they're going to enter the big bad world, and that world is going to reinforce their stereotypes. What's better, potentially, and more effective is to define success in math in alternative terms. Their teachers are the experts in what math is and what math success is and isn't. So to the extent that teachers can define math to be and explain to children that math is a skill like any other and it can be acquired by anyone, I think that is likely to have a positive effect on all children's motivation and engagement with learning in math. Young kids are used to the feeling of sort of being unable to do something today and then being able to do it the next day, right? So let's capitalize on that. Math feels hard today, but so did putting on your clothes and tying your shoelaces, and now you can do all these things, right? You might say to a young child. So you too can learn how to do math. And with that, I want to conclude and thank you to my wonderful students and collaborators who joined me in this work for several years now. I will also want to thank our funders for their support, and to you for listening. If you want to read some of our papers, you can download them at this website using this QR code if you want. And I look forward to the Q&A, so please join me there.
If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm also going to type my email in the chat in case you have questions that we don't get to. Thank you, Dave, for your question. So Dave asks, mathematicians think that, yes, it does take smarts to do math. And I have myself encountered that reaction when I speak to groups that include mathematicians. I think that the thing to think about, and the reactions often, like, I feel I would be lying to my students if I said, that this is not true. I think what you have to do is think about it from a kind of like the population perspective. Whether or not that's true, if you say that to children in your classroom, you will have a substantial number of them starting to doubt their ability to do math and distance themselves from math because of the stereotypes that all of us are marinating in as members of this culture. So whether or not it is in fact true that math requires a lot of smarts is beside the point here. The moment you start talking about it that way, you are likely to discourage a substantial number of children from pursuing math. And those children are particularly the children that we want to encourage to pursue math. So that's kind of the bind that you find yourself in if you're a strong proponent of the idea that math is in fact for brilliant people. Yeah, so I mean, I hear this a lot, Letitia, from people that I talk to about this work, and it's, I mean, it's sad, but a lot of people resonate and have heard these messages before, which is all the more important for us to kind of get this message out and start maybe reframing how we talk about success in math. I like Deborah's point as well. We already talk about reading as a skill, so like you just need to acquire the building blocks that will allow you to read, right? So we already have a good model for how to talk about a school subject in a way that doesn't send these messages, these exclusive messages that only certain students can succeed, right? So we can adopt those sorts of messages for math as well. And I think, again, thinking at the level of the population of students, that will prevent tens of thousands of students from essentially thinking that math is not for them, who are likely to think that given the current environment. So the session will end in 30 seconds. Yes, so there should be a repository. So Pamela asks if we can get PDFs of the reports. Yes, there should be a repository that you have access to via this platform. If you can't find them there, just send me an email and I will send you all of them. Also, if you watch the video again because I think you can replay it, the QR codes, if you just scan them with your phone, they'll take you directly to the papers. And I link PDFs so you don't have to worry about paywalls or anything like that.